Very good. You should have been sent out an agenda. I see the one thing that's not on are the minutes from January 25th. So we do need to have approval of those. I would look for a motion to approve the agenda with the addition of approval of those minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes with the addition of the approval for last month's meeting notes.
Second, Susan Morris.
So I understand the motion. Is it a motion to approve the agenda and the minutes from the January 25th?
With the addition of the minutes.
Oh, okay, very good. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please. Angie?
All right. Sharon LeMay,
Yes.
Chris Dubose,
Yes.
Lance Peterson,
Yes.
Mike Mergens,
Approve.
Jim Burkholz,
Aye.
Jackie Anderson,
Aye.
Susan Morris,
Aye.
Jerry Shavak,
Aye.
Steve Hallen,
Yes.
Doug Odegaard,
Aye.
Kevin Chapdelaine,
Aye.
Janet Hegland,
Aye.
Fran Miron,
Aye.
Diane Blake.
Yes.
Okay, I think that is everybody who is here. And if somebody new joins in, can somebody just pop a note into the chat to let me know so I don't miss them in the next roll call vote?
Okay, thank you. And then we do have the minutes from January 25th that were sent out. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to look at those. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes? And if not, a motion to approve would be in order.
I'll move to approve. Steve Holland.
Second, Doug Odegaard, Pine County.
Okay, we got a motion second. Any discussion? Roll call on the minutes, please.
Okay, Sharon LeMay,
Yes.
Chris Dubose,
Aye.
Lance Peterson,
Yes.
Mike Mergens,
Yes.
Jim Burkholz,
Aye.
Jackie Anderson,
Aye.
Susan Morris,
Aye.
Jerry Shabak,
Aye.
Steve Hallen,
Yes.
Doug Odegaard,
Aye.
Kevin Chapdelaine,
Aye.
Janet Hegland,
Aye.
Fran Miron,
Aye,
Diane Blake.
Yes.
very good. Motion carries. Minutes are approved. Thank you. We'll move into an update on the implementation timeframe. And I don't know if Angie or Craig is going to lead us off.
I will go ahead and just verbally review the implementation timeline that I sent to the group in the email last week. And Craig can jump in to provide updates on how things are going with the grant with eLink and Bowser. So where we are at right now is that we have successfully submitted our budget request to Bowser in order to receive our funding and put together a grant work plan. And the steering committee has developed a framework for how to implement each of the 10 activities in that work plan. So that was also sent to you all. What we are in the progress of doing, but have not yet completed, is making an additional overarching annual work plan, which would also create the activities that are happening just through local funds or with other grant funding sources. We have posted for the education position and are accepting applications until April 7th. And I'll note that there have been many applications so far. So that should prove to be, a good hiring process. We will be discussing today who is on the hiring committee. Let's see. And you all will be talking about the implementation framework today and, just reviewing what the steering committee is putting forward. On April 13th, the Chicago SWCD board will approve contracts with the Conservation District and Washington Conservation District and Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District for the staff time related to administration and education. And we are thinking that there is not a real reason for the policy committee to meet in April, that we will skip April and then move on till May 24th, when hopefully we might have new staff to introduce to the group. And we'll also perhaps have a full annual plan for you all to review. Craig, do you or Emily want to jump in with any additional updates?
I think Angie did a really good job covering the chronological order of stuff that's going on. Chicago SWC Board as a fiscal agent did approve the contract agreement with Bowser that's been submitted along with the work plan. We're just working through some stuff, and Emily can touch a little more base on this coming up, working on some stuff with the final work plan with Dan Fabian. I'm working with our county attorney to finalize the grant agreements, the subcontracts, excuse me, that'll go out to the partners that Angie mentioned coming up in mid-April. And those should be wrapped up here hopefully in time for that April 13th deadline. Unless there's any questions, I guess I'll turn it over to Emily if she wants to talk about the process we're going through with E-Link.
Yeah, I can give an update. So I actually just checked the work plan since it was approved by the policy committee in January is actually doubled in size from 11 pages to 22 pages. So it's gone through a few iterations. We've needed to add some more detail. We've also clarified the processes a little bit. A lot of the bulk of the pages, we've added attachments A and B, which provide some more detail on the 2 new hires, the agronomy outreach specialist and the shared services educator. We added some more notes about how the subcommittees for each activity are going to function, and there's more detail about the subcommittees in that implementation framework that the policy committee will consider acting on later in the meeting. But the E-Link work plan at least lists the lead for each of those subcommittees, but it doesn't detail out every single member. It also provides a little bit more info about kind of how the subcommittees are going to work and what's the process for approving contracts and things like that. We needed to add activity rates, hours, and staff qualifications, kind of Bowser requirements like that. Yeah, and then we added a note about how the project ranking will follow that process outlined in the comprehensive watershed management plan, the Lower St. Croix plan. That's basically it in a nutshell of the status of the work plan. So it's like Craig said, it's still under review by Bowser, but hoping to wrap that up by the end of the month.
Any questions for Angie, Craig, or Emily?
I have one question. The work plan sounds more extensive in the framework for Bowser's application. So is it possible to get a copy of that? It seems like some of the questions that we had might be answered by looking at that more detailed plan.
I'm sure that's possible.
Yeah, I'd recommend that the planning team send that out to the policy committee once it's approved by Bowser. I think there's a few little remaining tweaks we're going to make, but definitely we should send that out once it's finalized, because I think the direction of it is about the same, but there's just a lot more detail.
Angie, Angie's part of the planning team. I'm assuming Angie, you'll send it out to the group once it's finalized by Dan Fabian the next week.
Sure, yeah.
Good, thank you.
Any other questions? Emily, do you want to update us on E-Link?
Sorry, I got a little feedback on that. Would you mind repeating?
Yes, I'm getting some feedback as well.
No.
The next item of business, the E-Link.
Oh, yeah, I think that's basically the update is Bowser's still reviewing. And I think there might be a few more changes that we'll make, but we'll send out that final E-Link work plan once it's approved by Bowser.
Okay, very good. Next item, Angie.
The next item, and I noted that this is kind of a light policy committee meeting. Hopefully nobody has a problem with that. But the main thing for you all to review is the framework the steering committee has put together for how the work plan activities will be implemented over the next 2 years or so. So I will go ahead and share my screen so that we can walk through what that will look like. Is everybody able to see it okay? Okay, so I'm just going to start kind of walking through each activity, and other members of the steering committee who are here can jump in to elaborate or answer questions that might come from the policy committee. Feel free to just pause and ask the questions as we're going instead of waiting till the end. Activity number 1 is creating the Basin Ag Outreach Program. The lead agency, and this was already approved by the policy committee back in January, is Washington Conservation District, with Chisago SWCD acting as the co-lead agency because they are the grant recipient and will be subcontracting with the WCD. But the WCD will be the host for this new position. A selection committee comprised of up to 5 staff and policy committee members will be developed to establish the list of activities to be completed by the position, conduct a cost-benefit analysis of contracting versus hiring, conduct interviews if the group decides to hire. And there are several people listed here who have been recommended to be on that selection committee. So Lance Peterson and Dave Tolberg from the policy committee, and then Jay Riggs, Maureen Hoffman, and Matt Moore from the steering committee.
I have a question on this position before we
Yes.
leave it.
Yeah.
Is this the agronomist position?
Yes, this is.
Okay, so is this person going to be a Lower St. Croix
Yes.
focused person, or is it going to be, it's being hired through Chisago or through Washington County? I don't.
It will be hired by Washington Conservation District, presuming that the group decides to hire instead of contract. But the person will be working on behalf of the whole Lower St. Croix partnership. So the Conservation District will merely act as the host for the position.
So will this person, let's assume that they have a business card. Would the business card say that they're a Lower St. Croix agronomist? Or will it say Washington Conservation Service?
I think that it would probably say Lower St. Croix.
I hope so, because, you know, to make this, to get the buy-in that you need in every entity that's part of this, it's very important to have these people that are being hired for that purpose to be associated with the Lower St. Croix One Watershed, One Plan, or Lower St. Croix Watershed District, basically, is what it is. And every community has to build local buy-in to these concepts. And so if we can keep it broad like that, we talked about this, I know at prior meetings, it's very important that we keep that premise going.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I know that one thing the group talked about too is that even though Washington Conservation District would be the person who's ultimately cutting the paycheck at the end of the day, the staff person wouldn't necessarily office out of the WCD either all of the time or only. They might have, half of the week they're spending up in Chisago County and half down in Washington County. Or, if a lot of their work they're doing is out in the field, they wouldn't necessarily be in an office all the time anyway.
Good. All right.
Chris,
Thank you.
You had a question?
Yeah. Are you looking for motions to accept this membership of this subcommittee individually for each of the committees? And then also my second part of my question is, have all these people been approached about serving on these committees?
Let's take the second part of the question first. Angie?
Yeah, so the second part, yes. I know that Craig Mell spoke with both Dave and Lance, and Jay, Maureen, and Matt volunteered while at our steering committee meeting a couple of weeks ago. To the first question, perhaps somebody else from the planning team could jump in too. I was envisioning us asking for kind of a policy committee approval for the entire framework.
That's correct, Angie. That's how we looked at this. We were looking at the overarching document to be approved at the end.
But I
And
think
that-
that there is room to make adjustments if the policy committee feels necessary. If one of these activities doesn't feel right, we can make an adjustment before you all approve it at the end of the meeting.
Yeah, that was my hopes too. It's a little wonky trying to get roll call votes and we take a lot of time. So I think having some discussion, if there's some comments with respect to the selection committee members here, we could certainly have that discussion at this time. Or to Jackie's point about our branding and marketing of this particular position, if someone disagrees with that, certainly some discussion at this time would be good on that issue as well. Jackie, I'm glad you raised that issue because I agree. I think it's important that our branding and marketing be the Lower St. Croix One Watershed, One Plan.
It looks like Susan Morris has her hand raised.
Commissioner, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So it feels a little weird to be handed this document and have it already like, so who made the recommendation? Not that I don't agree or disagree with the committee members who are chosen here, but it feels a little weird that it's already been determined. So can you just talk us through the process and who was chosen and why?
Sure. And Craig might want to jump in on this particular one, especially in regards to the policy committee members. The steering committee members, this was all, anybody who's on a list here was just from the steering committee meeting that we as a group were like, who wants to be on this list? You know, who seems to make sense. But Craig, I know you had, you know, pretty strong motivations for why to invite the two policy committee members that you did.
Correct. So that's a good question, Commissioner Morris. The steering committee went through, we listed the people we wanted on this selection committee. And two of the members from Chisago County, one being Lance Peterson, who's an at-large member. I think Lance can speak for himself gladly if he'd like to talk. I did talk to him prior to the meeting. Dave Tolberg is the alternate from Chisago SWC. Dave is an agronomist. He's a lifetime agronomist. This is his line of work. To me, it made sense to have an agronomist if we have one on the policy committee, whether it's a member or an alternate member, be on the subcommittee list for the hiring process. Lance, did you want to talk at all about your background a little bit?
Sure. You know, kind of what got me here of being able to be appointed to the position here on this committee. You know, conservation farming practice has been pretty high on our list on our farm here over a solid decade now. Minnesota Ag Water Quality Certified Farm for going to be 4 years now. 2018 Outstanding Conservationist of Chisago County SWCD back in 2018, and that did well at the state convention as well. No, it's something that I'd like to be able to have input talking to the potential agronomist that's going to be working with farmers like myself and others in our local region, and kind of be able to hopefully pick the right person for the job here of working with water quality for our area. So kind of being able to do a little bit of the walk the walk, talk the talk type of thing here as a farmer. I think it's pretty important to have a little bit of a voice in what we end up choosing.
I think a couple of things Lance doesn't mention. He's a mentor for the Minnesota Soil Health Coalition. He's heavy strip tillage. He's compliant with the buffer law. He has public ditches on his property. He's hosted numerous tours over the years, sessions that we've held there from soil health perspective. So that's why those two are recommended.
Craig, Dave Tolberg wouldn't be a potential candidate for the position, would he?
He is not. We talked about that and he was not interested.
Okay.
Good question.
Looks like we have a couple other hands up.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Go ahead, Angie. Just call on them as they came in.
Sure. Susan, did you have another question or was that? Okay, I'll put your hand down. I see Chris DuBose then.
Yeah, I was just going to add that on the surface, when I first saw that, I was wondering about having two brand new members of the policy committee on that subcommittee. But when I hear their experience, I completely support their membership on that.
Okay. Let's see, was there another? I heard somebody, Jackie, were you?
Yeah, I can't get my I can't get my hand.
That's okay. I heard you.
Yeah. Just to clarify, I was going to ask the question, but I heard agronomist mentioned several times. So this is to be an agronomist, correct?
Yes, I think the precise title that we have been using is agronomy outreach specialist. So somebody who has an agronomy background, but also will be able to act as an outreach person and actively reaching out to farmers.
Okay. I know that Mike Kenny from our district has an interest in serving on this committee for hiring an
Okay.
agronomist. He's a certified agronomist. I don't think his certification is active anymore, but he did that for a number of years, 10 or 12 years. So he's expressed interest to the board about serving on that committee.
Okay.
One thing I wanted to say about, I like the overview perspective of approving this because people can come and go off committees for a number of reasons. And I think it's important that we not lock down, a set name, that it stays flexible. It's good that people are listed as starting out. You've got your starting group, but people are going to come and go on these committees. And so I think that should be left more open. It's the concept that we're approving.
Yeah, and I'll note too for this particular activity that this is just the selection committee, and you'll notice when we get to activity 2 that there is then a subcommittee formed to implement the ag activities,
Right.
like the actual structural and non-structural BMPs. I know that like right now, Mike is listed as TBD because he wasn't at the steering committee meeting. So we didn't want to do the thing of, putting him on the list without getting his, getting his okay. But we recognize that as well, that he does have that expertise and background in farming.
Okay, thank you.
Angie, this is a selection committee, but in addition, they will be doing some of the cost benefit analysis in determining whether to contract or hire. So it does go a little beyond just the interviewing and selection. So
yep, it does. It's true.
Was there any rhyme or reason to having an odd number of people, or can we add and round it out to 6, or do you think we should have 7? What's the
I don't think there was any rhyme or reason. Our only thought was we didn't want to have an overwhelmingly large selection committee. I don't think anybody would be opposed. I might be speaking on a turn. But I don't think anybody would be opposed to it becoming a committee of 6 instead of 5. I know that's kind of what happened with the education committee. We had enough people who wanted to be on that one that we just felt like it would be easier to make it be 6.
Yep. Does anyone object to adding Mike Kinney's name to that list?
I don't have an objection, but I would just like to know how ties are going to be handled if we have an even number.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
This is Jim Burkholz. I would be comfortable if they make their decisions based on unanimity. The committee probably can come to agreement on things and move forward that way. If we have split votes, that probably shows we're not ready to maybe make a commitment. I hope that's what happens.
Anyone disagree with Jim? It's a good thought process, Jim. I would agree with you there. So I don't see a particular problem in having 6 there. Steve, did you have, I see you're muted now, so.
I just think the same. If we've got an even number, if we're only doing it to break ties, to have odd numbers, we're probably picking the wrong person anyway.
Any other comments on that? And I didn't hear any objections to adding Mike Kinney to the list, so we will add Mike Kinney to this document.
And I think Tiffany is taking minutes right now. I realized that this document that I opened in front of you is a non-editable version. So she is presumably updating that on the minutes for the meeting. Okay.
Any other questions on this portion of the document or any other comments? Otherwise, we'll move on to activity 2. Go ahead, Angie.
Okay, for activity 2, this is implementation of structural ag BMPs. And I just want to scroll down real quick to activity number 4 to note that we are not creating 2 separate subcommittees for structural and non-structural ag practices. We are in activity 4, we're basically just referring back to activity 2. So the lead agency would be Chisago SWCD, subcontracting with local partners for specific projects when they're passing through grant funds, with the Washington Conservation District as a co-lead. And then a subcommittee composed of Lower St. Croix partners will be developed to develop a process for how to fund projects, establish cost share ranking criteria that includes non-state match requirements, meet intermittently to rank projects and make recommendations to the Chisago SWCD board for approval. The subcommittee will also select non-structural ag projects using the targeting and prioritization process identified in the plan. And all of the projects and practices will follow NRCS or Bowser approved standards. We did have discussion about the fact that for the selection committees, we thought it was nice to have policy committee members on, but for a lot of these subcommittees that are doing the implementation work, they're going to be meeting pretty frequently and it's going to be a lot of hours involved. So at the moment, the steering committee is recommending only steering committee members for those other subcommittees, the work groups. So staff liaisons for the subcommittees, Jay Riggs, Tiffany Detterman, Caleb Anderson, Matt Moore, Craig Mell, Paul Swanson, whoever the new agronomy outreach specialist ends up being. And then we had Mike Kinney as TBD since he wasn't there to confirm whether or not he would participate.
Sounds
Any
good.
just go ahead. Is that
thank
Jackie?
you, Jackie. I was just going to jump in and say that we're glad that you're combining activity 2 and 4 because we think that goes hand in hand. And there's a lot of non-structural BMPs that have better results for lower cost, and otherwise you've got competing subcommittees here. So we like that, and thank you for including Mike. I just want to say, you know, we're a small district and a small staff, and so if you look at having Mike in all of these areas, it's about a week's worth of time out of his duties to the Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District, and we want him to be as involved as possible. But it is a stretch for a small group, so we are looking at how he can accomplish all of that. So,
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments on this section of activity 2? Go ahead, Angie.
Okay. We are on activity 3, the Basin Water Outreach Program. The lead agency for hiring this position would be Washington Conservation District, once again with co-lead agency Chisago SWCD, and a selection committee comprised of up to 6 staff and policy committee members will be developed to establish the list of activities to be completed by the position, conduct interviews. So the position announcement is out there and we're accepting applications until April 7th. But obviously we have not scheduled any of the interviews yet. So far we have 4 members of the steering committee, myself, Jay, Jerry Spetzman, and Susanna, who have volunteered to be on this hiring committee. I know that Janet Hegland had expressed interest in being on the hiring committee as a policy committee representative. And then we have a spot for 1 more policy committee member to join.
Janet, just because your name is here, are you okay with that? You still have an interest in this process?
Yeah, Jamie contacted me last week and asked if I'd be willing to serve, and I'm more than happy to.
Okay, good. Thank you for doing that. Do we have any other volunteers to fill that other policy committee member position?
Yes, I would like to be on this one. I have a communications and marketing background, and so this is a good fit for my background. But this isn't just hiring though, right? This is an ongoing committee after to help set
Yeah,
guidelines and so on.
yes, I mean, this will be a committee that will, create the position and establish, hire the person and establish what it is that the person will do. Our vision is that, so this position, I should point out, we are using funding from the Lower St. Croix WBIF grant and existing funds from MREP. We're putting them together because otherwise we would only be hiring half a position. So we're putting them together to create one full-time position. So our vision is that the MREP steering committee and the new Lower St. Croix partners will combine to create a new enlarged steering committee that will be overseeing the activities of the whole education program. So, myself, the new hire, and we've talked also about tapping into some of the time with Emily Johnson at Anoka SWCD right now.
These committees obviously are going to be important, have an important role in making selections. Have we thought about, when you either hire or contract with someone, you also set up probably a 6-month review, maybe a year review. Would it be possible these committees could function in that capacity as well? As we look at reviewing the positions and providing feedback on the role as it relates to the job description that in some ways this committee is implementing or creating. So
that's a great question. It's not something that came up during any of our conversations, but that is a great question and suggestion.
So, maybe keep in mind that if you're volunteering or going to serve on the committee, that, it, as Jackie indicated, it may continue on for a while at least and serve some other purposes, because I think it would be good just to tap into those people to do that 6-month performance review and maybe even the year performance review.
Yeah, and this position also has the same concerns for us as the agronomist, is that it is a basin-wide person. You want to have every partner own this position.
Yep,
and
absolutely.
have it presented as something that LGU is doing and participating in. So it can't be just Washington Conservation District. It can't be just Washington County or MRAP. It's got to be Lower St. Croix. We've got to build that.
Yeah.
Why we're all doing this.
Yep. And, and this is perhaps getting too much into the weeds, but I think that, potentially in the long term, as we're blending the Lower St. Croix partnership with MREP, that, maybe the MREP name goes away and we find a new name for that shared education program that better describes who the partnership encompasses. So, yeah, that's definitely something we've been talking about with the new Northern partners.
Okay.
So unless I hear an objection, we'll add Jackie's name there as another policy committee member. And I'm sure that as we looked at the other committee, if there's someone else that has a strong interest in serving in this capacity, we could probably add another name if there is someone there. We will add Jackie's name then to the list.
Okay.
Angie, do you want to move on?
Yep. I will move on to structural urban BMP implementation. And once again, I'll do the scroll down because, yes. So in terms of technical engineering, we are referring backwards to this activity and activity 2. So we're not, we're not creating a committee just to look at how much money will be spent on technical engineering. For the structural urban BMP implementation, the lead agency would be Carnegie Marine St. Croix Watershed District with Chisago SWCD as the grant recipient subcontracting with local partners for specific projects. The subcommittee would establish cost share ranking criteria, meet intermittently to rank projects and make recommendations, select non-structural urban projects using targeting and priority processes, and conduct enhanced street sweeping targeted analyses to identify priority areas. And we're looking at really emulating what the Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District did in Forest Lake back in 2018, using that as our landmark example that we're copying. So the staff liaisons for the subcommittee would be Mike Eisense, Casey Till. Sorry, I have that mislabeled. She is with Chisago, not WCD. Either Brian Pinn or Andy Novak, Tony Randazzo, and potentially Mike Kinney. We weren't certain if he wanted to be involved, but he does have that expertise from having overseen the Forest Lake street sweeping study in the past.
Any discussion or comments, questions on activity 5? Go ahead, Angie.
Okay. Activity 6, wetland restoration implementation. The lead agency will be Anoka SWCD with Chisago as the co-lead. Staff liaisons for the subcommittee recommended Becky Wozni, Caleb Anderson or Jeremy Williamson, Todd Kuloff, Jamie Sherban, Paul Swanson, and then maybe Mike Kinney or Jeff Fertig. We don't have confirmation from either of them if they can for sure participate. So the subcommittee, this is a much, if you haven't looked at the budget recently, this is a much smaller line item than the rest of the grants. So this is, a pretty small budget item, but the subcommittee would look at projects, rank, and make recommendations for approval.
Any questions, comments on activity 6? We'll keep moving, Angie.
Okay, and activity 7, internal analyses. Chisago County would be the lead agency with Chisago SWCD as the co-lead. A subcommittee would be formed to consider which priority water bodies are most in need of targeting analyses. The priority lakes for internal analyses are listed in table 5.4 of the Comprehensive Watershed Management Plan. And the subcommittee will further prioritize timing of when the analyses would be conducted based on the lake's progress toward watershed load reductions. So we're looking at a smaller subcommittee: Jerry Spetzman, Susanna Wilson Wachowski, Mike Eisense, and Jamie Sherburne being on that group.
Any questions, comments on activity 7? Go ahead, Angie.
Okay, we're getting close to the end. Targeting analyses. The lead entity for this would be Washington Conservation District. A subcommittee would consider which priority water bodies are most in need for targeting analyses. The top priority would be St. Croix direct drainage area, and secondary priorities would be water bodies listed in either table 5.2 or 5.3 of the Comprehensive Watershed Management Plan. Mike Eisense, Jay Riggs said that he would start the committee in the beginning, but he would like to transfer, transition that over to being another staff person at the WCD in the future. Somebody from the Chisago SWCD, somebody from Pine County or SWCD, and potentially somebody from Comfort Lake Forest Lake. And Casey from, Craig is messaging, Casey from the Chisago Soil and Water Conservation District would be the person.
Any questions?
It's just a general question, and that is, this is the framework we're working on today. At the May Policy Committee meeting, is that when we're going to see the actual selections for the work plan for the next year and a half?
Will that be when you're looking at actual projects?
Yeah.
No.
Project selections.
No, that's going to be farther in the future. This is just you know, the group of the people who are going to start sitting down to select the projects, and I'm not certain how to expect how soon they will have those projects lined up to bring to this committee.
Okay. All right.
The additional information in May would just be what projects are already happening that are getting funded through other sources, either through local funding or through other
Okay.
grants.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Angie.
Okay, so there's a portion of the budget allocated for technical engineering support, but that's just being related to activities 2 and 5. And then there's a portion of the budget allocated for administration and coordination. So right now, the way we have been operating, Chisago SWCD is the fiscal agent and would be the contract coordinator for all subcontracts to pass through funding from Bowser. The Conservation District in Washington County would be hiring and doing payroll administration of the agronomy, outreach, and education positions. But as we've discussed earlier, those would be shared positions for everybody. WCD is just playing the role of the person who cuts the paycheck. MREP would be work plan activity subcommittee coordination, MREP meaning me, basically, coordinating to make sure that all these subcommittees are meeting, policy committee coordination and keeping the website updated. And then Comfort Lake Forest Lake is doing grant and progress reporting and also website support as needed.
Questions on either 9 or 10? So you have the document in front of you. We've made some changes, mainly adding names. We had some discussion about, the committees maybe staying in place for some time afterward. Angie, any other changes? I'm trying to remember now, any other changes that we may have identified?
I don't think so, but Emily, Tiffany, do you want to speak up if there's anything else? I know that both of them were taking notes in the background as we were talking.
I'm just looking through my notes. I think you got them all covered.
Okay.
I would just add the clarification that these positions are to be basin-wide, identified as basin-wide positions.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
And I hope that came across well on our position announcement for the educator. We tried really hard. It was a stretch to figure out how to describe the position in a way that a person applying would know where they're going to work, but also understand that it's very much a partnership that they're working for. Emily says that she added 2 bullets to activity 3, that committee might conduct the first 6-month review and annual performance review or periodically check in on progress made by the hired educator.
Any other changes that anyone would like to see made to the document?
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the document with the suggested changes.
Thank you, Commissioner Morris. We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that, Steve and Brian.
Okay, I'll take that from Steve. So we have a motion and second approving the framework for implementing the Lower St. Croix plan activities. Any discussion? Certainly the changes that were talked about will be included in the minutes for the next meeting. So, I would just encourage everyone to review that document to make sure that it reflects what you wanted it to in this motion as we approve the minutes at the next meeting. Any discussion at all? I'm not hearing any. Angie, would you call roll?
Certainly. Sharon LeMay.
Yes.
Let's see, Chris DeBose,
Aye.
Lance Peterson,
Yes.
Mike Mergens,
Yes.
Jim Burkholz,
Aye.
Jackie Anderson,
Aye.
Susan Morris,
Aye.
Jerry Shabak,
Aye.
Steve Hallen,
Yes.
Doug Odegaard,
Aye.
Kevin Chapdelaine,
Aye.
Janet Hegland,
Aye.
Fran Mirren,
Aye.
Diane Blake.
Yes.
And that is it. That is everyone.
Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Good discussion. I appreciate everyone's review of these items, prior to the meeting and the good discussion that occurred as part of it. So the last item on my agenda is discussing next steps and then potentially adjourning. So Angie, anything we've missed here? Is there any other business that we need to have discussion about from any of the policy members?
No, not from my perspective, but we're happy to entertain any questions anybody might have. The next policy committee meeting would be May 24th. And for the people that are on one of these selection committees, we'll obviously be following up in the near future about scheduling times for those committees to meet and interviews and everything like that.
I would suspect we'll schedule that May meeting as a virtual meeting as well.
Probably.
It may be sometime after that things will open up, but I'm just speculating that, we'll probably still meet virtually for that meeting. Any other discussion as part of the meeting? Any other business we need to take care of? And if there is none, a motion to adjourn. Well, actually, if I'll wait and listen for any, because rather than call another roll, I'll just adjourn the meeting unless there's some other discussion.
Yes.
Yeah, everybody, I appreciate your diligence here. I thought we accomplished a lot in a short period of time. And Angie, we appreciate, you reviewing all of the documents with us here today, and along with Craig and Emily. We appreciate everything being brought forward, and the volunteers that step forward and to serve on the committee. We appreciate all of the extra work that you'll be doing as part of that process. So thank you much. Enjoy the weather. Hopefully we'll get a little rain here for those of us that do farm. Lance, a nice rain would help take the frost out of the ground now and get things off to a good start for spring, correct?
I would be fine with that.
Yeah. So sounds good. I'll call the meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone. It was good seeing you all.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.